Welcome, parents. My name is Heidi Schutz, and I'm going to be conducting a seminar to teach you guys about combating childhood obesity. I'm going to learn what to know, what to do, and how you as a parent can help combat this problem. A little bit about myself. I received my BA in Communications at Cleveland State University. I'm currently a candidate for the Masters of Science in Applied Nutrition program at the University of New England, and my expected graduate date is 2021. A little bit more about me. As far as my work experience goes, I'm currently working as a medical assistant at the Department of Dermatology at the Ochsner Clinic Foundation in New Orleans, Louisiana. I have a love for dermatology and medicine in general, and my future aspirations do go beyond a medical assistant. I plan on either applying to a PA school or to medical school to pursue my aspiration and love for medicine. I've had a couple published articles in the past for the Cleveland Clinic Foundation. I've done several medical missions to Central and South America, where I volunteered and really got to see firsthand how nutrients especially are lacking in basic resources in underprivileged countries. I've had quite a few hours of volunteer experience in the emergency department, also at the Cleveland Clinic. I love being around patients and again, just medicine and seeing what we can do to better serve the community that we live in. I was a former boxing instructor. I love staying active. I do Krav Maga, which is a martial art, Spartans, and anything with obstacle course racing, as well as rock climbing. I do love nutrition. I am definitely learning a lot about it, and I feel as if it's going to make me a stronger healthcare provider after I reach my aspiration, depending on which route I go. That's just a little bit about me. An overview of this seminar, just to summarize what we'll be doing, is we're going to start off by defining what childhood obesity actually is. We'll talk about the prevalence rates, kind of current trends, seeing what's going on with numbers, understanding its consequences and what childhood obesity can lead to, not only in childhood, but also throughout adulthood. We'll review some of the facts, statistics, and current data reflecting numbers with childhood obesity. And lastly, we'll be discussing parenting tips. So ways you can get your child engaged through their nutrition and family activities and other ways that you can help as a parent. The learning objectives for this seminar will be as follows. Leaving this seminar, my hope is that you will be able to describe the possible health outcomes related to childhood obesity. You'll be able to recognize and discuss various factors that contribute to childhood obesity. You'll be able to identify and apply actionable dietary interventions that you and your family can take in creating healthier food environments. And you'll be able to construct healthy meal plans to incorporate into the household. So let's start off by defining what child obesity actually means. So what makes a child obese? There's a number that we calculate, which may be defined in what's known as the body mass index, or BMI. It's basically a person's weight in kilograms divided by their square height in meters. So these are plotted in growth charts, and they're very specific for children, particularly among 2 to 20 years of age. You can download this free at the CDC website, where you can also find a free BMI calculator as well to calculate your child's actual BMI. But obesity comes in when the child's height versus weight, after being plotted on one of these growth charts, exceeds the 95th percentile. So what causes obesity in children? There are several factors, as you can see on this chart, that can contribute to child obesity. There's no one answer. It's really a multifactorial problem. And as you can see, there are several different areas of concern that we will discuss in further detail. But to give you an idea of what things can contribute to obesity, we'll start with the genetic and kind of antenatal factors, meaning some things while you are, carrying your child, pregnancy for women out there, There's some genetic predisposition, so certain areas can predispose you given family history. So if you know that high blood pressure runs in the family, or perhaps any kind of other predispositions to obesity, your child will be more likely at risk. So this is not the be all end all, but it's certainly one factor to consider. Dietary trends and habits. So this is a major one, and I think quite explainable, but I will dive into that a little bit further and say that your child, what they eat, you are what you eat. I believe that. And I think that how they develop their healthy habits, how they develop their healthy eating patterns is certainly going to explain a lot. Does that affect your child's dietary trends and habits? Include such things as screen time, how much are they on their phones or computers or playing video games, the culture that you create for them. So do you guys have movie nights more often than not? Are you all more sedentary versus doing active things when it comes to free time? Snacking. So how many times is your child snacking throughout the day? Such things as rewards and punishments. If your child is misbehaving, are you using food as an example to make sure that they are going to stay behaved? So all these things contribute to dietary trends and habits. This kind of plays into what I just mentioned, but the physical inactivity or sedentary activities are absolutely monumental in your child's ability to simply burn more calories than they're taking in. So if your child is someone who is not fond of doing sports or playing outside, doing things that children naturally like to do, this is something that can certainly be of concern. There's also the built environment, which we consider such things as physical buildings and roads. This is the actual surroundings that basically can either encourage us to move more or maybe encourage us not to move more. If you're in a room or a house rather with, not a lot of stairs or not a lot of space, if you're going from work to school, are you walking there, or do you have sufficient roads and infrastructure to get you there? So this is what is meant by the built environment. The socioeconomic status. So some families are on very limited income, and this absolutely can affect how much quality of food you are bringing into the household and therefore able to provide for your children. So there's several factors that can influence that, and in turn, you have certain barriers that can develop as a result of that. So, as those are some of the main causes, again, not all, and it's not just one that leads to this, it can be several or a mix of a couple different ones. But the effects of obesity are very alarming, and there's just a couple here on the slide that I'm going to go ahead and speak about. So we have all kind of health issues that can relate as a result. We have insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. We have a hormonal issue called polycystic ovarian disease, or PCOD. Several cardiovascular related factors, specifically cardiovascular disease, may also develop. Sleeping issues such as obstructive sleep apnea can also happen, as well as psychosocial problems. All of these are main categories that we will dive in a little bit deeper. So why is this an issue? As seen in the previous slide, outside of the health consequences that can happen, there's other consequences to be had as well. So just to touch quickly on some of the facts about how widespread it's become, about 2/3 of adults and a quarter of children aged 2 to 10 years old and 1/3 of children aged 11 to 15 years old are either overweight or obese. So you can see that this is definitely an issue that is very large and is only getting bigger. The prevalence remains high. Overweight and obesity in adults are predicted to reach 70% by 2034. That's a huge number, and something needs to be done about it. More adults and children are now severely obese. So there's definitely been a transition from not just being overweight, but being obese. And there is a distinction between the two. Obesity, as we had mentioned in the initial slide, is when that BMI, or that body mass index, exceeds that 95th percentile. So there's also consequences that are related to money. A high BMI is costly not only to the individual, but to the health of the individual and the social care. You know, there's a lot of economic and societal impacts that being obese has. So it affects more than just the health of your children. It affects you. It affects how much money the healthcare system needs to provide in providing care for this. So it's definitely far-reaching. So going to the numbers of childhood obesity, as we discussed the problem earlier, currently there's about 13 million people, 19% of which are US children from age 2 to 19, which have obesity. Again, as kind of emphasizing in this slide, there's so many serious diseases that arise out of childhood obesity, and we've touched on some of them, but to kind of restate this, there's asthma, type 2 diabetes, and depression. And, you know, unfortunately, obesity does not affect every child equally. If we look at the picture here, we have about 4 different types of groups represented. So as you can see, if we compare obesity by race and ethnicity, Hispanics are at the highest percentage of obesity at 26%. Non-Hispanic Black children are at 22%, non-Hispanic white children at 14%, and lastly, non-Hispanic Asians are 11%. So obesity does affect different groups, as the numbers indicate, some more than others, with Hispanics being at the top of the list there. If we compare it by household income, there's three figures here represented. We have less than the federal poverty level of 130% at 19%. We have 130 to less than 350% of that FPL at 20%, which is the highest. And then we have those that exceed that income, that FPL, greater than 350% at 11. So right in the middle, you can see it's a fine line between low income to middle income, between that 19 and 20%. But you can see how they are more affected compared to those with a higher household income. So just to give you some facts about childhood obesity, just some things that you may not have known that might be surprising, but I'll give you a couple here, and some I'll allow you to read on your own. But nearly half of preschool age children do not get enough physical activity. 70% of obese children have at least one risk factor for heart disease, and 39% have at least 2 or more risk factors. When looking at the toddler age division, between 40 and 50% of toddlers, defined as age 25 to 35 months old, watch more television than is recommended. Another fact is an estimated 12.5 million children aged 5 or younger spend an average of 33 hours per week in childcare settings where they may consume most of their daily calories. So some of these facts you may be surprised to know, some of them you may not. But these are things to consider that, again, need to be addressed when trying to tackle this enormous problem. So obesity harms children and young people. Going back to some of the things that obesity can do to your child and to the society around you is they can be left with emotional and behavioral issues. Everything from bullying to low self-esteem to stigma can arise. Increased school absences were noted. outside of the health factors that we've touched on previously, they have a much higher chance of becoming obese as an adult.